Hey, what's up everyone? This is SnackBox. Hope you all had a great day. In this video, I want to talk about LYDIA, which is arguably one of the best legendary champions for Chimera, and here is why. Before we start, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and now let's get back to the video. So, why is LYDIA actually so good in Chimera? Why are so many people using her? And it's quite simple. With the amount of debuffs and buffs she provides, you can complete many trials. And that kind of like is the main goal at the moment. At first it was to get the highest amount of damage possible, but now players realize that it's probably better if they focus more on trials to get more extra rewards, because we're limited with 2 keys each week and you want to maximize your rewards. You don't get more rewards just by getting higher damage. Of course, you will get a better placement in Chimera Clash, but the rewards from the Chimera Clash are not as good as if you would complete 13 or like over 10 trials. So the priority shifted kind of more towards completing more trials, and this is why LYDIA is so good. I'm pretty sure most people know what she does. She's been in the game for a very long time, and she's basically a free-to-play champion, so everybody will have her at some point, and most people do. If you don't use her in Chimera, you should start doing it. Of course, there are quite a few team comps that don't require to have LYDIA, and there are some other options. Most of the time it comes down to some mythical champions, some key champions. But yeah, let's talk about LYDIA. Her A1 alone is very strong, and the reason why is she has a 100% chance to place a fear debuff on her A1. Now this is really good to control the ram form. As we all know, the ram form can be really annoying with the damage reflect and the debuff deflect and so on. And with the fear, you get kind of a little bit of control over the ram form, or at least you have the chance to. And you can use her A1 every turn. So no cooldown, nothing whatsoever. You can use the fear debuff on the ram form every turn, unless it gets resisted or whatever. But there's also a trial, right, that requires the fear debuff, and there are not many champions in the game that can provide a fear debuff and other useful things for Chimera, so to have this on the A1 is so strong. Now the A2, probably the most popular skill of LYDIA, which is, you know, one of the few champions or one of the few skills that can place a big version of decreased defense and a big version of weaken at the same time on the same skill with a 100% chance. And not only that, she's also keeping a strengthen buff and an increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns, which is massive, because increased speed is just so important on your Chimera team, just to get more turns, to be able to outlap the Chimera, get more turns, do more damage, you know. And then if you bring another champion into the team that has as well an increased speed buff, you kinda can time the skills that way that you have an increased speed up all the time, which is very powerful. Also, the strengthen buff helps to survive the Chimera attacks, because if you complete a lot of trials, from 10 trials, you know, the Chimera damage really increases significantly, and you will recognize it on the amount of damage the Chimera actually does. And the Chimera will only get stronger and do more damage from that point. So you really want to bring in any buff that can provide some form of survivability, and strengthen is really good for that. And also it's a free turn cooldown, which is amazing. Then her A3, it's a 2-hitter, and this skill actually can control the Viper form. You have a 100% chance to place a poison sensitivity, which is also part of a trial, to place a block buffs, which you also need for a trial, and a block active skills debuff, which you also need for a trial. So all of her debuffs work towards completing trials, and to have 3 debuffs on a single skill is amazing. You know, there are also not a lot of champions that can bring poison sensitivity. Most of the champions that do have poison sensitivity are poison champs themselves, but you kind of don't want to bring a poison champion in, because there's not much else what they do. You have the poison sensitivity here, and then you can bring somebody like a Ferrikin, which I use to bring in poisons to do, one of the trials. You could also use a toxic set, but I'm not a fan of a toxic set because you lose control over the debuff bar. You don't know when your champion's going to place a poison, and if you are running a team that is debuff heavy, it can really mess up your debuffs. So I'm not a fan of the toxic set, but it's definitely an option. Same thing as like people like to replace Lydia with a Riho or a Ramantu, which I also don't really like because yes, they place a lot of debuffs, but they do it with one skill. And if your debuff bar is full for some reason, or you don't want a certain debuff to be on the Chimera at that moment, it really takes away control over the debuff bar from you. With Lydia, you have 2 or 3 skills that can place debuffs. And for example, on the Ram form, sometimes I don't want the Ram form to have the decreased defense because that just means my damage dealer will deal more damage, then more damage gets reflected, and he will most likely kill himself. So I like to hold the decreased defense back on the Ram form, for example, and just have a weaken if possible to push my damage a little bit, but not that much that I'm threatening to kill my DPS with the reflect damage. So there's a lot of pros for Lydia, and I don't really see any cons. So everything that Lydia actually does just speaks for her. She's kind of like designed for Chimera, to be honest. She controls 2 of the forms. The Lion form doesn't really need any control. It's pretty much harmless as soon as you have block debuffs on your champions. And yeah, I mean, if you're not using her in Chimera, you should definitely start doing that because she's absolutely amazing. Most of the people use her too, and that's not for no reason. She actually performs better than most support champions in Chimera. At first, it was actually a little bit of a surprise that she's so good in Chimera, but I'm really happy about it because Lydia is a free-to-play champion and everybody can have access to that, and that's a good thing. The only thing that is useless in Lydia's kit for Chimera is the passive and on the aura, you can say, but that's about it. You anyway want to have a speed aura in your Chimera team and not, a resistance aura. But yeah, that's just my take on Lydia, and I think of many other people too. Her value just increased significantly with the release of Chimera, as she's, in my opinion, one of the best legendary support champions there is for this content. And I also use her in Hydra, and I think many other people do too, so she's just overall amazing. But yeah guys, that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching, and with that being said, see you in the next video.